Was this Big Ben's last rodeo? And Mitchell Trubisky winning the Nickelodeon MVP? All this and more from a wild, wild card weekend. Join us for Fins Up Ramily.
And on we'll go.
Hey guys, welcome back to another Fins Up Ramily, the only YouTube channel that is both Rams and Dolphin related football. So if you are a fan of either the Dolphins or the Rams, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below and turn on the bell for notifications so you don't miss any of the videos like this one. So Ashton, my fellow co-host here, it was a wild weekend
Mm-hmm.
of football games. We saw some great games. We saw some wild things happening. Which of those games, other than your Rams games, would you consider your favorite game before we get into each one and break them down real quick?
Ooh, I would say my favorite game, just out of like pure competitiveness, would probably be that Bills Colts game. That one was just a very solid back and forth. I thought both teams had a chance to win that game. And, arguably it was the Colts game to lose, and they just kind of failed at the end to put together good drives. The Bills were putting together a decent amount of pressure to kind of like get the Rivers. I think Rivers has proven he's one of those Hall of Fame quarterbacks who isn't in the Hall of Fame because he's necessarily like a legendary QB talent wise. He is a constant performer. He is good enough to get you in the playoffs constantly, but he will never get you past there on his own. The team around him has to be perfect to get him to a Super Bowl and possibly win one. And hey, he does a better job than I ever would, but he has to focus on throwing more accurate balls than pumping out children if he wants to have a Super Bowl ring eventually.
My favorite game of the week had to be the Buccaneers and Washington game, just for the story that was Taylor Heinicke, the undrafted backup XFL player, I believe, or is AAF. It's one of the two. It's just slipping my mind.
XFL.
XFL. This man was basically Wolford, but like even worse than Wolford, because Wolford at least started in his like minor league football league. So I just love the story of seeing people come age when they're needed and shine, and they did. I know they didn't win, but even Tom Brady had respect for him, and that's when you have respect from arguably the greatest quarterback of all time. You know you deserve it. So that's my favorite game, solely based on the story. But let's go ahead. Let's jump in on just the reactions to the games. We start with your favorite game, the Colts, the Bills winning a tough one, 27-24 in Buffalo. The Bills, my favorite, gets their first playoff win since the 90s, I believe. It's been a long time coming for the Bills fans. They deserved it. Josh Allen put another great game up on display, and the Bills win in that game.
Yeah, a great win. I think both me and you had them winning. We kind of saw this one coming. No table in Buffalo is safe. So if I was a table, I would stay away from Buffalo for a few weeks because there are going to be a lot of broken tables, especially if they win their next game. But it was just a good quality win. I thought the Colts did better than what people were expecting. They did kind of what I expected. I don't know if I said that in our prediction video, but I thought the Bills would win by 3 or 6 points. That's the feeling I had, and they ended up winning by that. So it's still a good team effort. Josh Allen, man, has he improved? He is a great quality QB, and he keeps on improving. So, the Bills got a keeper with that, and they have a good head coach, and I can tell they're going to be in a few Super Bowls in the future.
Adding the Stephon Diggs from last year to this year really just changed the offense of the Bills, because not any credit to Brown and to Cole Beasley there. They're very good secondary receivers. Beasley really is just solidly good his whole career. But they're no elite talent receivers. Stephon Diggs, the leading receiver this year, is just a perfect connection with Josh Allen, complements him well. The Bills offense can rock when it gets going. But the one thing I will say about the Bills tonight, not tonight, but Saturday morning time, was their rushing game did not look great. Their leading rusher was in fact Josh Allen with only about 54 yards. So they need to get that going as they're going to be playing. I wouldn't say the Browns per se, not the Browns, the Ravens. The Ravens can handle a rush defense. We saw that as we'll get to the Titans game soon. So they got to get the running game going. I do like Josh Allen more than I like obviously like Ryan Tannehill, so I'm not that worried about it. If you can stop both, that's my problem. They need to have more of a balanced attack in the postseason. But overall, the Bills just had a good game. So did the Colts. Really, they came up just a smudge short. They didn't go for a field goal when they should have. Might have changed the game. We don't know. That's just a coaching mistake there by the
Mhm.
Colts. Funny stat line, Ashton, is that there were zero turnovers from either team, so it was a very clean game. And it's fun to watch those games where it's really determined by one or two coaching plays coaching situations that changed that game, and that's how the Bills won. Was one decision to go for it cost the Colts the win, and the Bills move on and play the Browns next week.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely one comment on that game. I thought it was very very fascinating. The coaching decisions, especially by the Colts. I think Frank Reich is a solid coach. It's kind of amazing how they treated that QB situation so badly with their last QB, and now that I wonder what direction they're gonna go. So it's gonna be interesting to look because that team is one piece away, and I think the announcer said this too. They are one piece away from being a good quality playoff run team, and I think that's a really really good starting QB.
Next game up on that Saturday, first day of the wild card weekend, your Rams beating the Seahawks 30-20. And let me tell you, Ashton, Staley deserves all the money in the world. You have to pay that man. I mean, he made Russell Wilson look trash for 3 straight games against them. Lock down the receivers. Staley can perform against the Seahawks like the 49ers do against the Rams. There's just that kind of, they have your number. They know how to play against your scheme. And they cannot play against the Rams. Even with I'm sure we'll get to the hit in a second when you do your little spiel, but even with Goff coming in with things in his thumb and just coming off thumb surgery, they still did fine. Goff didn't have the best game, but I don't blame him. He was hurt. He did enough not to lose, so give him credit there. But a solid win by the Rams. I wouldn't say they're the scariest team in the playoffs right now. They're going to have a good matchup against the Packers next week that I know everyone's interested in. I know you're interested in. It's going to be a very cold one, too. Uh, Originally, we both had the Rams winning, so congratulations to us. And, I'm excited to see what happens when they get to Lambeau Field next week, Ashton.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, who has a two, or well, one broken thumb and another broken thumb and a W in the playoffs? This guy. I mean, I just gotta say, Andy, like you're starting to experience this for your own team after a rough few years. When I became a Rams fan, it was in 2015 when they moved back to LA, and I didn't know what to expect when they moved back to LA. I knew they were going to have a rough year under Jeff Fisher. I expected that when he got fired and they announced this guy Sean McVay. uh, you have hope, but you see how many times in the NFL a young coach, and Sean McVay was the youngest, to come in, become a head coach, and they fail and they get fired after a year. I mean, you look at the post from the Rams when they said they hired him, and a lot of people are like 0 and 16, 0 and 16. And the Rams have been to the playoffs 3 out of 4 years, last 4 years under Sean McVay, and 2 out of the 4 years they made it to division. That's success for a franchise that hadn't played in the playoffs like 8 or 9 years, ever since the greatest show on turf. So I'm very blessed as a Rams fan to be right now. I appreciate it. A lot of people take for granted when their team is good and playing in the playoffs constantly. So, talking about this game, man, what a game. Yeah, that hit was dirty. I didn't like it. I get technically it wasn't targeting. I think there should be a rule to protect defenseless players like Seahawks fans. You had two playoff games in a row where you hit out an opposing QB. it's starting to get to the point where it looks like you're targeting QBs in playoffs. And you need to be more careful, and players need to take care whenever they're tackling a certain way, especially QB. Um, because I guarantee you, if that happened to Russell Wilson and he went out and they lost that game, Rams fans wouldn't hear the end of it. I get he was a backup QB, but you had to take care of player safety. End of that rant. Um, man, Staley Yandy. It's he's special. He is special. When Sean McVay hired this guy, and he's like, "This is the Sean McVay of defense." I was like, I don't know. We're moving on from Wade Phillips. I agreed with that decision. I thought his defense, while always in the top 15, he was consistently inconsistent with how good and bad his defense was game to game. And I think while our defense, especially in 2018, was better during our playoff run, it still wasn't developing the way it should have been. But this Rams team hasn't had a first round pick in what, 4 years, Andy? Their last first round pick was Jared Goff. And how many other teams have had constant first round picks that aren't in the divisional round this year? I think it's a testament to how well this team drafts. And I know you were shocked when I told you our sixth rounder was like a steal and we always draft safeties well. Well, all of our safeties are ballers, and I think no one can say that the Rams didn't find a diamond in the rough when you look at this guy named Darius Williams. Like, of course, we have Jalen Ramsey on the other side, but that makes your job 10 times harder when everyone's looking at the other side to throw at because they don't want to throw at that guy. But when they're throwing at you, Darius Williams, I mean, he must hate Russell Wilson. He has 3 picks on him. Leonard Floyd, I know you were skeptical of this pick. You thought it was a downgrade. I told you it was an upgrade. Well, Leonard Floyd has more sacks than most teams do just on Russell Wilson. He has 7 sacks on Wilson, and that's most. I think that's more than most Seahawks players have themselves, and that's just on Russell Wilson this year. So he must have some vendetta against Wilson I don't know about because that man was getting hungry for sacks. Our defense was just constant pressure. Um, it, I can't glow more and more about the team. I'm happy with the season, even if we don't pull out a win this weekend. I know we're underdogs, but I really think we have a good chance. So,
I will say this, I never understood the media's fascination with the Seahawks team because ever since really the whole let Russ cook thing with his name, they decided to be terrible on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, the defense got better, but offensively they just became stale as all get out. And they played the Rams 3 times in those last really half of the year, including the playoffs. That didn't help. So I never understood why all these media experts, all the pregame people, always keep picking the Seahawks when every single week they're proving that their offense cannot beat the. I mean, after you lose 2 straight to the same team, oh no, you guys split, and you only lost one. The Seahawks only won the game because of just bad playing. But to me, the Rams have had the Seahawks' number on Russell Wilson. So I never got the media fascination with the Seahawks, why like they thought they were this great team. But I think the Packers being the underdogs, I mean the Rams being the underdogs to the Packers is a different story with the Seahawks. I truly think that the Packers are just a better play, obviously a better team than the Seahawks. And I think it'll be a good game, but as you know, we said in
mm,
our playoff predictions, I got them winning above you guys. You got them
mm.
winning. So we'll see how that goes. It will really all depend on your quarterback play, depending on if Wolford's he might be healthy enough to start, but we'll see how that hit
I
affects his confidence with running.
I've been going back between that this week because I got it right with John Wolford starting. I told you he would start when a lot of people thought Goff was going to start. I'm leaning towards Wolford right now. Of course, I don't know any of the actual medical stuff, but if I give it a guess, like Goff looked fine, but man, that thumb looked like a potato, and
He did, yeah.
like
I agree, Ashton. I mean, Goff, yes, he got a touchdown. He didn't throw any picks. But if you look at outside of two big plays, one by Cup where the ball was thrown terribly and Cup made an amazing play with two defenders, so you got to give him credit, and a quick screen to Akers into a 30-40 yard gain. Other than that, he didn't do the best, but he didn't cost you stuff. So that's how you win against the Packers. I think your defense can stop them enough as long as Goff doesn't make mistakes to win. But we'll see how if Goff or Warford's there. But moving on to the last game of the Saturday slate, that night game, superstar Heineke does lose 31-23. Tampa Tom wins another playoff game. Crazy that he keeps on winning. This time Tampa Bay didn't look the best, but again, they weren't playing the best of teams. The worst, probably this, I will say Washington's better than the Bears. So the second worst team in the playoffs, in my opinion. So only winning by a score isn't the best. I think Tampa's going to really get their, I'm going to say butts handed to them, but really be exposed. Steelers were against the Saints this week. Um, but very inspirational story by Heineke. I like Washington. They're going to keep getting better. I like what they're doing. Ron Rivera is just kind of those hardworking kind of coaches that doesn't complain, doesn't really isn't flashy, but will get the people to play as hard as ever. You look at that Panthers team, how it made the Super Bowl, but then crumbled. So you kind of had that. He gets the best out of his players. So they'll be back. Tampa Bay won. Good for Tampa, but I don't trust Tampa next week.
Yeah, Tampa is so streaky, and I feel like they could sneak out a win against the Saints if the Saints end up just sleepwalking that game. But I don't see them winning more than two playoff games, Andy. I just don't. And to be honest, like I agree with you, I don't see them going out of the Saints. Not because they don't have the capability of beating the Saints on a good day. It's the fact that it's like so they're so hot and cold. And like they struggle against bad teams. They struggle against good teams most of the time. I think they were what 5-6 against playoff teams. So that's bad. I'll be surprised if they beat the Saints, but it all depends how good Drew Brees is feeling and if he comes in healthy and if Tampa Tom just is on fire that day. Because for some reason they have the best wide receiver room, but yet they don't connect all the time. It's very weird.
I think it's telling also just how when you think about that game, there's really two things that come to your mind. One, the story of Heineke, I know several times, the inspirational story of him. That's something you get. And then how Twitter went berserk when they compared Tom Brady to, was it George Blanda and the two ages of the quarterbacks. Like, you don't remember anything Tampa Bay did in that game. You know they won, but you know it wasn't a winning game. So it just kind of shows to me that if you remember the other team and then a comparison of age of your actually the way your team played, that's a problem. And like I think the Saints will expose that. I think the Saints will win. But Tampa Bay's got the firepower too. If they're hot when they're hot, like they did against the Falcons, they can win and they can win big. I just don't think it's happening next week.
Against the Falcons. Hey, but you'll be able to watch on the History Channel Drew Brees versus Tom Brady.
the, oh my gosh. Moving on, Ashton, game of the Sunday slate. Very good game. Both me and you got this game wrong. My only wrong prediction, and I'm so upset that I did, would have been perfect. But the Ravens winning against the Titans 20-13. Wow, Derrick Henry was not a force. I know I was warning everybody before this game that if you stop Henry, you stop the Titans. Like Henry looked bad. Lamar Jackson had more yards and less carries. I think I think Henry only got like 40 yards on the ground. It was bad. The Ravens just had their number. But don't get me wrong, the Ravens did not play great. Lamar Jackson threw a pick. He didn't even get a single passing touchdown. So he just ran the ball, and you can't do that against every single defense you play. He will be able to. I think the Bills will be a little bit better of a matchup for him not being able to run as much than the Titans. So I think it's going to really limit him to passing more, which will be the downfall of the win here. But I don't see them moving on, beating the Bills, honestly.
Yeah, I agree with you when, like, to your earlier point about the Bills needing to run. You need to run on this Ravens offense. You have to keep Lamar off the field. And, I think the Bills are going to struggle against that if they go against a better defense from the NFC. but they got to get there, and I think they'll be able to beat the Ravens. Even though this was an impressive win, I didn't expect the Ravens to move on. They're still not the same caliber team they were last year. They're not steamrolling anyone, and I think if they somehow sneak into that championship, they're probably gonna get obliterated by Mahomes.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of think the Bills, and this is going to sound weird, at least is definitely a better matchup when they play the Ravens than the Titans was because the Titans are a one-dimensional running game, and the Bills are basically, for all intents and purposes, a one-dimensional passing game. But the difference is Stephon Diggs is amazing, and they have very good complements with Beasley and Brown, with a phenomenal MVP kind of caliber quarterback, not MVP, but in that conversation nowadays. So I just don't think the Ravens have the pass coverage, the pass defense that they against a great quarterback like this. So that's why I got the Bills, Ashton. But moving on to the most interesting game in the ways that it was on Nickelodeon of all places, slime
Slimed.
galore. Bears, not Bears, Saints beating the Bears 21-9. And earlier in the intro, Mitchell Trubisky won the MVP, which is the Nickelodeon most valuable player. Crazy because they lost. So it was so many crazy things happened. Every touchdown was slimed. Every flag, you had young Sheldon coming in. It was crazy. It was so bad. It was good kind of coverage. It was just funny as crap. The Saints struggled, but the Bears defense was good. But man, their offense is just as bad as ever. They finally got a touchdown literally with 0 seconds on the clock. So for all intents and purposes, they didn't get a touchdown in this game. So it was really a 21-3 game, but it was not because of Graham one-handed catch. But fun, weird sports cast, but Saints win. They're going to keep going.
I feel so bad for Bears fans. That organization needs a gutting, and they just so happen to sneak into the playoffs, and they're gonna keep around a bad coach. Um, ugh, that's all.
I mean,
That game was that bad.
last game of the night. As a team that hadn't made the playoffs in many, many, many years, recently as like 3 years ago was 0-16 or 4 years ago, now has the record for most points scored in the first quarter
Wait,
in playoff
Andy,
history.
I think there's police coming. Someone reported a murder, and it was a Yenzer yelling. Yeah, Yenzer yelling with some salt, major salt. Yeah, ooh, Steelers.
Man, did the Browns
Mmm.
just smack him? I remember I was sitting there, got my dinner, ready for this game. I see Marquise Pouncey snap the ball 2 feet over Big Ben's head. And Big Ben's not no small guy. They call him Big Ben for a reason, people. So that thing was like 8 feet in the air, all the way back to the end zone. Touchdown Browns instantly. Big Ben goes back on the offensive side, throws a pick. Browns score again. I'm sitting there because my mom is a Steelers fan. And I was this close to making a bet with her about the Browns winning. But I only stopped myself because of Stefanski being out for COVID. But you go back to our predictions of this video, even though you told me about that, I still picked the Browns to win. So I'm glad I found me because, man, the Steelers are the biggest fraud of a team we have seen in who knows how long. How can you start 11-0, then finish a season with losing so many of your games? I think it was the 4 of your last 5 games you lost, and your offense looks bad. Yes, I know Big Ben threw like 500 yards and 4 touchdowns, but he threw 4 picks in this game against the Browns without Ward, one of the better cornerbacks they have. It's ridiculous. The Browns were even without their starting left guards. I think left guard Batano. He was out for the game. Not to mention OBJ's out for the year, and their head coach is gone. Yet they still just macked the Steelers. And I'm going to say one more thing, Ashton, which is kind of a hot take, and I'm going to get some hate from Steelers fans and even just normal NFL fans down in the comments. I think we can kind of put in the conversation Mike Tomlin and Sean Payton for those coaches that are better than Mike McCarthy, but just by a little bit, because there's no way that the Steelers should only have one Super Bowl win when they had the roster that they did for so long. It's ridiculous. The defense that they have is ridiculous not to even make the divisional round. I'm not saying it's Tomlin's fault, but they get into these big situations and they always lose in recent memory. It's been a long time since we saw the Steelers actually a contender for the Super Bowl, and we thought so, at the beginning of the year, but as soon as the offense really started to come and show their faces, and Schuster was on TikTok every week instead of actually caring about football, it's just ridiculous to me. The Steelers overrated. Browns are going to lose. Obviously, they're going to get spanked against the Chiefs. But if you're a Browns fan, congrats, you finally won a game, and I'm happy you made it, even though you lost to the Jets.
Well, I mean, I'm happy both me and you, we didn't take two teams really seriously after, I would say, before the midpoint of the year. We didn't take the Bears seriously, and we didn't take the Steelers that seriously. And both of those reasonings have panned out, even when the media was going crazy. You know how they go high on teams prematurely, super easily. They're just silly. Um, yeah, the Steelers, no excuse for losing this game, honestly, given the situation the Browns were in. And it's, man, I remember turning on the TV and it was going to be a second quarter, and I sat down because I was going to miss the first quarter because I had to do chores and stuff. And then I look on my phone and I just see 27 and 0, and I was like, oh, I saw that wrong. 27 and 0 at the first quarter. I was like, ooh. I was like, I'm not turning that game on. That is going to be boring. That's just, oh man, that's abuse. I hope Steelers called police or something because they got mugged
Yeah,
on national
it
TV.
was just ridiculous. And like, I'm not gonna like try to take credit away from the Browns. They were a very good team this year. I'm very glad they got Stefanski, and he great hire finally worked out for them. Baker Mayfield took some steps to look better this year, and I'm glad he is. Finally, those Hulu commercials are starting to actually make sense for him. But come on, the Steelers should not have allowed that. It was the Steelers' games to lose, and they just lost it. And they're gonna have to really do some soul searching because Big Ben, maybe this year, maybe not, but still is going to be a huge cap hit on them. You're going to have problems with finding the running game because there's no running game right now. As much as I love Connor's story, he's not that good. So they don't have a running game. They don't have a passing game because Big Ben's going to be old, and you can see him starting to lose his stuff as he is throwing so many interceptions this year. And they got a good receivers, but they're going to be expensive because if you don't believe Schuster is going to ask a ton of money once his contract is up, he will. So they're going to have to make decisions because the offense is the problem. That defense is solid. It's elite. It's going to be fine. But they need to figure out on offense, or they're going to be in this kind of loophole where it's wild card and done or divisional and done, but they can't get past it. But there you guys have it. We're very excited for this coming up weekend's games. Your Chiefs, Browns, Ravens playing the Bills, your Rams and the Packers, and then of course the Saints and the Buccaneers. We're gonna watch all the games, react to it again. Also later this week, at least I plan to putting out a video for the Dolphins as well. I'm going to be talking about the Deshaun Watson trade rumors and what I in regards to the trading, and then kind of the draft classes to the Watson trade. So look for that coming up in the weeks later in the week as well. We hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, like it if you like the video, but subscribe if you want more Dolphins and Rams and general NFL content. Thank you guys for watching. Stay safe out there, guys, and we'll see you next week.